Greetings all, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we have a collection of some of the most twisted, unhinged threads and posts that have been gathered from some of the darkest places of the internet. Before we begin, you must be warned. What you're about to hear are anonymous confessions. Not rumors, not stories passed around online, but moments people carry with them every day. Some of these involve crimes, some involve silence, and some involve decisions that changed lives forever. As you listen, ask yourself one question. What would you have done? Because by the end of this video, you might realize the line between right and wrong is thinner than you think. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And now grab some snacks, sit back, relax, and let's dive into it. I don't think I'm supposed to be alive. And I don't think I came back alone. Anonymous. Throwaway. For obvious reasons. I'm not looking for advice or sympathy. I just need this written somewhere that is in my head. 5 years ago, I overdosed. Not accidentally. I wasn't sad, exactly. Just tired in a way that felt permanent. I remember lying on the floor thinking, this is fine. This is how it ends. No panic. No regret. Then, nothing. No tunnel, no light, no memories flashing, just absence, like being powered off. When I woke up in the hospital, everyone kept telling me how lucky I was, how close it had been, how I'd scared them. I nodded. I said the right things. I let them believe I'd been given another chance. But here's the problem. I don't remember choosing to wake up. And ever since then, things have been wrong in small ways that are hard to explain without sounding insane. People pause when they look at me now, just for a fraction of a second. Like they're recalibrating. My dog, who used to follow me everywhere, won't come into my room anymore. He plants his feet at the doorway and whines like he's afraid of what's past it. Mirrors are worse, not because I see something different, but because sometimes my reflection reacts a beat too late. Smiles linger. Blinks feel delayed, like latency. The real reason I'm posting, though, is this. I've started remembering things that never happened. Not dreams, memories. Clear, detailed, emotional memories of places I've never been and people I've never met. But the feelings are real. Especially the guilt. Crushing guilt, like I've done something unforgivable and forgotten a crime. A few months ago, my sister asked me why I keep locking my bedroom door at night. I told her I didn't realize I was doing it, she said. You always check the closet too. I don't remember that. But I started paying attention. Every night, before I sleep, my body goes through the motions automatically. Lock door, check window, closet last, and every time I open it, I get this overwhelming sense of relief. Like something is exactly where it's supposed to be. Empty. I haven't told anyone about the voice. It's not audible, not really. More like pressure. Intent. Sometimes when I'm exhausted or zoning out, I get intrusive thoughts that don't feel like mine. Not violent, not commanding, just patient, like it's waiting for me to stop paying attention. Last week, I found a notebook in my handwriting, hidden under my bed. I don't own notebooks. Never have. The pages were filled with dates from the time I was hospitalized. Pages and pages of them. with one sentence repeated over and over. If I don't wake up alone, don't let it sleep. I don't know what that means. I don't know why reading it made my chest feel tight. What I do know is this. Sometimes, late at night, when I am half asleep, I feel like I'm sharing my thoughts, like something is gently testing the edges of my mind, learning how I work. And every morning I wake up feeling more rested than I should. If this post suddenly disappears, or if I stop replying, please don't assume I got scared and deleted it. Assume I stopped needing to warn anyone, because whatever came back with me is getting better at pretending to be me, and I'm not sure how much longer I'll notice the difference. I don't want my name attached to this. I don't want forgiveness. I want this written down because the people who deserve the truth are either dead or were never listened to in the first place. I'm dying. Liver failure. Years of drinking layered on top of a lifetime of bad decisions. The doctors say I have weeks at best. They said worst. I've already outlived a version of myself who could pretend this didn't matter. 22 years ago, a woman named Lydia disappeared. That isn't her real name, but you'd recognize the case if you heard it. Early 90s, small town near a major highway. She worked nights. Last seen leaving her job just after closing. Car found days later. Purse inside. No sign of a struggle. No body. They called it a probable stranger abduction. Then they stopped calling it anything at all. Here's what the public never knew. I was one of the volunteers in the search party. Not because I cared, but because I needed to know how close they were. I worked maintenance at the same place she did. Not closely, just enough to notice her routine. What time she locked up, which doors she used, which nights she walked alone. I didn't stalk her. I didn't follow her home. I didn't plan what happened the way people want crimes to be planned. That makes it easier to understand, easier to hate. The truth is uglier. I offered her a ride. It was raining. She was tired. She recognized me enough not to be afraid. That's the part that still makes my stomach turn. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. Normal conversation. Complaints about work, gas prices, nothing memorable. Then she saw where we were headed and asked me to stop. I didn't attack her right away. I didn't need to. She froze. People always think they'll scream, fight, do something dramatic. Most people don't. She asked me why I was doing this. I didn't have an answer then. I don't have one now. What happened next didn't look violent from the outside. No torn clothes, no blood spray. Just hand pressure. A body that stopped resisting faster than I expected. I left her somewhere people had already searched. That was the point. When her car was found, I knew I'd done it right. Wrong, but right enough to get away with it. The police interviewed me twice. I passed a polygraph. Those things are garbage, by the way. Confidence and stupidity go a long way. Here's where it gets worse. They arrested the wrong man. He lived on the edge of town. Prior record. Socially awkward. Everyone already suspected him of being off. I watched his interrogation from the hallway while pretending to fix a broken vending machine. He didn't confess. Why would he? He pled his innocence, but he didn't defend himself well either, which worked perfect for me. When the charges were dropped months later due to lack of evidence, his life was already over. Marriage gone, kids gone, job gone, reputation gone. I told myself that was the end of it. It wasn't. Every few years, the case resurfaced. A podcast, a documentary, internet detectives, tearing apart old photos and time. I learned something important watching all that. People don't want the truth. They want a story that makes sense, a monster, a pattern, a satisfying explanation. What they don't want is a bored, angry man who made one irreversible choice on a random night and then went back to work on Monday morning. This was nearly 35 years ago. I got married, had kids, watched them grow up, went to their graduations, knowing I had stolen someone else's daughter from ever having that. I never revisited the site. I never needed to. I knew it wouldn't change. Construction eventually came through. Earth moved. Land repurposed. She's still there. Sometimes. I imagine someone reading this and thinking I'm lying, that I'm inserting myself into a famous mystery for attention. That's fine. I'll be dead soon. Attention doesn't help me anymore. But if anyone ever digs where the old service road used to meet the tree line, before they widened the highway, you won't find a dramatic scene. You'll find what's left of a woman who trusted the wrong person because he seemed familiar. And you'll find the reason this case was never solved wasn't incompetence, or lack of evidence, or conspiracy. It was simply luck, and people like me, counting on everyone else to look for something more complicated than the truth. I'm not asking for anything, as I'm certain by the time most of you read this, I would have already met my judgment. I deserve whatever's waiting for me on the other side. I've carried this for over 2 decades. I don't talk about it because nobody would believe me, and if they did, they wouldn't understand. When I was 21, I worked at a small-town grocery store. Night shift, quiet aisles, flickering fluorescent lights, a few regulars who looked like they were ghosts half the time. That's where I met Hannah. She was 20, worked part-time in the pharmacy, and came in most nights just before midnight. She had dark circles under her eyes and a nervous laugh, like someone was always watching. I noticed her first because she always seemed tired, not just sleepy. Tired in her bones. She'd wander the aisles slowly, humming to herself, never making eye contact with anyone but the cashier. Most nights, she didn't even buy anything, just stood there, staring at products she didn't touch. One night, I stayed late, stocking shelves. I was alone in the back when I heard soft crying from aisle 7. I walked over and found her crouched on the floor, knees to chest, shaking. "Hey," I said. "You okay?" She looked up. Her eyes were hollow. She didn't answer at first, then she whispered, "They're coming. They always come. I can't stop it." I froze. I had no idea what she meant. I asked her who they were. She shook her head. Her hands were bruised, dark lines across her wrists. I should have done something. I should have called someone. Anything, but I didn't. I just helped her up, got her a water, and walked her to her car. She thanked me quietly, avoided my gaze, and drove away. That was the last time I saw her in the store. Over the next few weeks, she stopped coming entirely. She had missed shifts. She wasn't answering calls. A week later, her parents came into the store and told my manager that she had disappeared. The police were called, search parties, flyers. Nothing. I should have come forward. I should have told them about the bruises, the crying, the way she looked like she was afraid of her own shadow. I didn't. I convinced myself she'd left town, that she wanted to, that I had no business interfering in someone else's life. Years later, I saw her face in a news clip about an unsolved missing person case. She looked older, thinner, worn down. The caption said she vanished from that town 21 years ago. My stomach dropped. I realized I had been one of the last to see her before she vanished, or at least in that moment before the spiral no one else ever knew about. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see her crouched on aisle 7, shaking, whispering about them coming. I can still hear her voice, and I can still feel the weight of doing nothing. I don't know what happened to her. I may never know. And every time I walk down a grocery store aisle, alone at night, I imagined her there, watching me, waiting for someone to notice. Still to this day, I don't know who they were, or even if they were real or just a figment of her imagination. I should have spoke up when her parents came into the store. That part still eats at me. Maybe they could have got to her in time. Maybe they could have saved her, or even just realized how serious it actually was. Was it mental health, her being part of some cult, or even drugs? I will never find out the truth. All I know is, she told me they were coming, and I'd done nothing. I really hope she is somewhere doing well. Hannah, if you somehow managed to find this post, just know that I'm so sorry I didn't help when you needed it. I was paid to observe people who didn't know they were being tested. I'm using a throwaway account to remain anonymous and to protect myself. This happened a few years ago. I answered an ad in the newspaper because it looked legitimate. University affiliated, behavioral research, confidentiality agreement, decent pay for short shifts, all very clean. Very professional. I was a psychology major at the time, desperate for something that looked good on a resume. The interview was in an office park. No signage, just a sweet number and a waiting room that smelled like disinfectant. The man who interviewed me wore a lab coat, but never introduced himself as a doctor. He said my role was non-invasive observation. Of what? I asked. Stress response, he said, decision-making under ambiguity. I signed paperwork I didn't fully read. I still hate myself for that. My job was simple. Sit in a control room and watch live video feeds from several small rooms. Each room looked like a modest studio apartment. Couch, table, bathroom, no windows. Each room had one person in it. They thought they were waiting. That was the cover story. They'd answered ads for paid isolation studies, told they'd be observed for sleep cycles and boredom tolerance. They were paid up front and told someone would check in eventually. No one ever did. At first, nothing happened. Hours of people pacing, scrolling phones, napping, knocking on the door occasionally. Some laughed it off. Some got annoyed. Then the delays started. Lights would flicker. The air would shut off for short intervals. A recorded voice would come on and say things like, "Please remain calm." or compliance noted. I asked my supervisor if this was approved. He smiled and said, "Discomfort is the variable." After about 12 hours, people started to change. One woman cried nonstop. One man tried to pry open the door with a chair. Another sat perfectly still for hours, staring directly at the camera like he knew someone was watching. That one made my skin crawl. On the second night, they escalated the test. The voice began lying, telling them time was passing faster or slower than it was, telling them someone else had already completed the study, telling them they had agreed to stay longer. Some believed it, and some, as my supervisor put it, some are harder to break. One man started counting seconds out loud to prove the voice wrong. When the lights cut out, he screamed, not in fear, but rage. He punched the walls until his hands bled. I asked again if this was ethical. My supervisor leaned close and said quietly, "Ethics are contextual." The breaking point came on day 3. A young guy, college age, collapsed on the floor. Dehydrated, panic attack, maybe worse. He wasn't moving. I stood up and said we needed to stop. That someone could die. The man in the lab coat didn't even look at the screen. "Emotionless," he said. "Not unless we let them." I realized then there was no medical staff on site, no emergency protocol, no intention of intervention. This wasn't a study, it was endurance testing. I quit that night, walked out without my pay. Told myself I'd report it. I didn't. Because a week later, I received an envelope, no return address. Inside was a check for triple what I was owed, and a printed screenshot. A screenshot of me at work, looking at the monitors. As if to say, "We have evidence you were involved." A picture of my apartment. Time stamped from the night before. I tore it up and told no one. Years passed. I tried to forget. Then, last month, I watched a documentary about a man who'd gone missing after participating in an isolation study. No body, no charges, just unanswered questions. They showed a blurred still image from security footage. He was sitting on a couch, staring directly into the camera. I recognized the room immediately. I recognized the way he was sitting. Still, compliant, waiting, looking at the camera like he was looking into my soul. And I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. They weren't testing stress. They were testing how much it takes to erase someone without ever laying a hand on them, mentally break them, without even being in the same room. And I helped collect the data. I didn't know what the job was before I applied. The title was vague. Content Integrity Associate. Remote. Good pay. No disclosure agreement. The onboarding packet said we were helping maintain platform safety and public trust. It sounded boring. That should have been my first clue. I worked night shifts, logged into a secure portal with two-factor authentication and a warning banner that said, "All activity monitored." The interface was an ugly gray box. Lists of usernames, timestamps, short video clips, chat transcripts. My task was simple. Review flagged accounts and assign a risk score. Low, medium, high. High-risk accounts were forwarded upstream. That's all the system told us. No explanations, no follow-up, just a checkbox and the next case. At first, it was what you'd expect. Scam accounts, extremist stuff, threats, easy calls. Then the pattern shifted. I started seeing accounts that didn't belong on the list. Normal people, teachers, college students, parents. Their flags were things like searching the same topic repeatedly, posting late at night consistently, using language associated with anxiety or grief, watching certain types of videos all the way through. None of it was illegal. None of it violated the platform's rules. I asked my team lead why these were coming through. He messaged back, "We don't assess behavior, we assess trajectory." One night, I reviewed a woman's account, early 30s, recently divorced, no threats, no politics, no criminal content. But her private messages pulled automatically, which I didn't even know we could see, were full of things like, "I feel invisible. I don't think anyone would notice. The system recommended high risk." I hesitated. I marked her as medium instead. 2 minutes later, my screen froze. A warning popped up. "Risk override detected." My supervisor called me immediately. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just asked, "What did you see that the model didn't?" I didn't have an answer. After that, I stopped second-guessing. I flagged who I was told to flag. Weeks went by. Hundreds of accounts, possibly thousands. Then, one night, I recognized the name. It was someone I knew, one of my dad's friends. Quiet, kind, had a good job, but recently divorced from his wife, and the proceedings turned ugly. His account history was painfully normal. Cat videos, workout clips, a few sad posts after his mom died. The system labeled him imminent. That label hadn't existed before. I hovered over the tooltip. User likely to disengage permanently within 72 hours. I felt sick. I tried to message my supervisor again. No response. 3 days later, I Googled his name. There was a local news article. No details, just a photo. And the phrase, "No foul play suspected." I quit. I told myself correlation wasn't causation, that I was being dramatic. Months later, I got an automated email asking if I'd like to return. New project, new wording, predictive attrition analysis. That's when it clicked. They weren't preventing harm. They were identifying people based on their algorithm and watching to see how long it took for them to disappear once the system nudged them far enough. I don't know who used the data. I don't know what happened upstream. But I know this. Every time someone says no one saw the signs, I remember the dashboard, because the signs were there. They were just never meant for help. I watched people on the dark web. I'm not proud. I'm not exaggerating. I'm posting this because, well, I can. It started when I was 19. I had a laptop, a VPN, and too much curiosity. I found the corners of the dark web people whisper about online, but never actually visit. The forums were empty in some ways. No one posting photos of cats or memes, but alive in other ways. Buzzing with quiet chaos. People selling things they shouldn't, asking questions they shouldn't, offering favors they didn't intend to honor. At first, I just watched a voyeur, a ghost, threads where people posted about breaking into houses, stalking, accidental deaths, posts asking for help. People posted confessions, all anonymous. Then I realized something. People were reckless, and I could manipulate it. It started small. I would reply with vague encouragement or false information. Try the left-hand door. It's easier. Or check the timestamps. That's what they overlook. I never explicitly told anyone to do anything illegal. He just nudged. Tiny hints, like whispering in a dream. And then I watched what happened next. Some people got lucky. Nothing bad happened. Others, not so lucky. I'd watch for weeks. As threads spiraled, someone would post again. Panic in their words. I shouldn't have done that. It wasn't supposed to go like this. I think I'd been caught. I never responded again. I just observed. Someone posted a story about breaking into a house to steal electronics. I'd already seen the map of the neighborhood. In a previous post, I commented cryptically, "Beware the neighbor behind the blinds." He ignored it. I watched the surveillance cameras in the neighborhood public feeds. Nothing illegal. He was caught by one within hours. They never knew why he chose that house or why he got unlucky. Another time, a post about someone testing chemicals in their apartment. I sent a vague tip about ventilation, signed off anonymously. Minutes later, sirens in that area. Nothing major, just a scare. But I knew he'd rerun it in his head, wondering if someone had seen him. Someone like me. I never joined any chats. I never answered direct messages. I just watched. But I knew the power of suggestion. I knew how far a whisper could push someone who already wanted to be pushed. The worst part, I started to crave it, watching people make small choices that had huge consequences without ever touching them, seeing panic blossom over weeks, observing the dominoes fall. I never harmed anyone directly, but I know now that doesn't matter. Somewhere out there, people are living consequences. I nudge them toward. Some are scared out of their minds. Some never recover. Some probably died. And they don't know why. I don't know if I'll ever stop looking. It's like a habit, like watching ants rearrange themselves. But the ants are human, and the rearrangement is permanent. The scariest part is, if anyone ever found out who I am, they wouldn't even understand what I did. They'd think I was a hacker, a criminal, a stalker. I'm none of those things. I'm just a whisper they'd never heard, and the echo will always haunt them. I was the one who put the account on hold. That sentence sounds heavier than it felt at the time. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve shouting or threats or even a decision that required a supervisor. It was a drop-down menu and a short internal note, written in neutral language that had been used thousands of times before. Reason for hold. Verification, discrepancy, action. Temporarily restrict outgoing transfers pending review. The system accepted it immediately. I worked in risk mitigation for a large financial institution, not fraud investigation, not collections, but risk. My job was to slow things down just enough that the bank didn't end up liable for someone else's bad timing. Speed creates lawsuits. Holds prevent them. That's what we were taught. The alert came in at 8:14 on a Monday. Unusual activity on a personal savings account. Not suspicious in the way movies show it. No foreign IP addresses. No sudden withdrawals to offshore accounts. Just a pattern change. Larger transfers than usual. Multiple attempts within a short window. The account holder had never moved that much money before. The system flagged it automatically. I reviewed it because it was my cue. The name meant nothing to me. Mid-40s. Single. Employed. No prior issues. Balance modest, but not precarious. The transfer destination was a hospital billing account. That alone didn't clear it. People get scammed using medical stories all the time. We were trained to treat urgency as a risk factor, not a justification. I opened the call log. The account holder had phoned earlier that morning. Voice note attached. They sounded tired, not frantic. Controlled in a way that suggested they were trying very hard not to fall apart. They said the transfer was for a deposit. Surgery scheduled within 48 hours. Insurance. Complications. Needed funds. Released immediately. They used the word immediately twice. That's another risk indicator. I checked the documentation uploaded to the portal. Hospital estimate. Insurance correspondent. Everything looked legitimate, but not verified. Verification takes time. Policy allowed me to release the funds with manager approval. Policy also allowed me to place a temporary hold while verification was completed. Temporary holds protect the institution. I selected the hold. At 8:21, the system generated an automated email to the account holder. Polite, apologetic, vague. We are reviewing your account activity to ensure your security. At 9:03, they called again. I didn't take the call. Another agent did. I read the transcript later. They explained the surgery was time-sensitive, that the hospital wouldn't proceed without the deposit, that they'd already delayed once. The agent escalated the note to my queue. At 9:27, I added an internal comment. Customer reports medical urgency. Documentation pending independent verification. At 10:11, a manager messaged me privately. Anything real here? They asked. I said, probably legitimate, but it's a lot of money all at once. They replied, your call. That's the phrase that always sounds empowering until you live with it. At 11:42, the hospital called the bank directly, not through official channels. A billing administrator asking about the delay. We don't confirm account details to third parties. I logged the call and took no action. At 13:18, the account holder uploaded additional documents. Surgeon's letter, admission, paperwork. They still needed verification. Hospitals reuse templates. Scammers know that. At 14:06, they called again. This time, they were crying. Not hysterical. Controlled crying. The kind where someone is still trying to be reasonable because they think that helps. They asked how long verification usually took. I told the agent to respond with the standard range, 24 to 72 hours. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. At 16:40, I logged out. The hold remained. At 7:58, the next day, the verification came back clean. The hospital was legitimate. Surgery was legitimate. No fraud indicators. I released the funds immediately. The transfer cleared at 8:12. At 9:31, an internal note was added by another department. Customer, deceased. Account flagged for estate processing. I read it twice before it registered. Later, quietly, through internal channels, the story filled itself in. The surgery had been delayed again. The condition worsened overnight. They'd gone into complications before the procedure could begin. The hospital returned the funds. There was no complaint filed. No lawsuit. No regulatory issue. From a compliance standpoint, the case was perfect. I had followed policy. I had protected the institution. I had not ignored the customer. I had simply required verification. People argue constantly about corporate responsibility, about empathy, about whether systems should bend for human urgency. I agree with all of them, depending on the day. What I can't stop thinking about is how calm everything was. No raised voices, no broken rules, no obvious villain. Just a hold that lasted long enough to matter, and a drop-down menu that never asked why now. Only what if you're wrong? Because in my line of work, being wrong in one direction costs the bank money. Being wrong in the other direction costs someone time. And time, as it turns out, is the one thing we can never reimburse. These confessions don't end when the video does. They linger. They follow people for years. If you want to hear the ones that never made the news, the stories people only tell anonymously, not for entertainment, but to understand how any of us could make the same choices. If you enjoy this type of content, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a future upload. Thanks for watching. Until next time.